Hey friends, welcome to a brand new chapter of Old Man Brad. Whether this is your first time in or you are coming back for another episode, thank you so much for giving me a listen. I really appreciate it. And if you love the show, drop me a review on your favorite podcatcher, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, whatever it may be. I'd love to know what you think of the show. All right, 2023 has come and gone. We are now into 2024, so that means it is list time. In this chapter, I'm going to give you some of my highlights and lowlights for horror movies I watched in 2023. For my highlights or my favorites or my top or whatever you want to call it, I'm giving you my top 13. Most people do a top 10. I'm going to go with a lucky number 13. And then for the bottoms, I'm only going to give a few. I'm not going to give you a big list of ones at the bottom, but these are movies that just did not hit for me. They kind of failed in that aspect. I mean, 2023 in horror, I thought was a really solid year. We had a lot of great movies. You'll see when I get to my top list here. I mean, it started off for me in March with Horror Hound. Every year here in Cincinnati, we have the Horror Hound convention. I go check out the film fest at Horror Hound and get to see a bunch of great films. Some of them actually came out this year, like Beaten to Death, Heebie-Jeebie TV, Brightwood, Shaky Shivers, just to name a few. And I'll say, anybody who visits Cincinnati, come out in March and come to Horror Hound. And if you're here, let me know. We'll meet up. We'll talk horror movies. We'll have fun. It's just a blast. So that really kind of kicked off my year. I mean, we had some movies at the beginning of the year that were really good, but March kind of really set that tone to go forward. There were many other, some movies that didn't quite make the list that I want to mention. Like, I really like The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe. I know it didn't get a lot of great reviews, same with The Nun 2, but I really enjoyed both those films. As well as, didn't quite make the list, like Saw 10 didn't quite make it, but it was a really good movie. Suitable Flesh, which is coming out very soon on Shudder. I highly recommend checking out this erotic kind of H.P. Lovecraftian film. It was so much fun. Some other ones that didn't quite make the top 13, Scream 6. It's a bummer what happened with, all the stories of Scream 7, because I felt like the franchise was kind of letting go of the originals and going to start becoming its own thing. But unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get any more of that. Another Horror Hound watch, and one of my favorites in the series, Subspecies 5, Blood Rise, came out this year. Absolutely loved that film. Another movie to check out on Shudder, Brooklyn 45. Thought it was a really well done movie. Just missed the list. Same with Brightwood, another Horror Hound movie. It's on Tubi right now. You should go check out Brightwood. All right, let's get into the lists. Let's start at the bottom of the list. We are going to start with my movies that just, I'm not going to say the worst of the year. These are movies that just completely missed the mark for me and did not work out for me at all. First on the list is The Meg 2, The Trench. I wasn't a big fan of the first one, and this one looked like it was going to lean more into that B-movie side of cheesiness, which it kind of did. It did more so than the first film, but tonally it was off. It was still like it wanted to be serious. It didn't want to really lean into the bad, cheesy B-movie genre. I wanted it to be like a Piranha type thing, like really cheesy like that, and then go heavy into the wild and crazy, but unfortunately it just didn't happen, and that's why it landed on the bottoms for 2023 in horror. Next is another shark film called Black Demon. This is a movie that I think it got a very limited theatrical run and then came to VOD. And this movie really leaned more into this environmental awareness story it was trying to do, and not so much the shark. You're watching this movie and you want this crazy shark movie. The shark's in the movie for maybe like 30 seconds. Like, there's hardly any scenes with this shark. and you're hoping for some mayhem and destruction and kills and all kinds of shark craziness, and you get none of that. It is just a boring, dull movie that I did not like at all. Another one on the list, I was excited to see this, and that is The Exorcist Believer. I'm one of the few that really liked what David Gordon Green did with his Halloween trilogy, Halloween, Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends. I loved Halloween Ends. I think the series should have been called something like Haddonfield because it kind of dealt more with the town and the effects of Michael Myers on the town. But go check out Two Peas on a Podcast. I did an episode with Gerald over there about Halloween Ends where I kind of talk about what I think the series should have been called and kind of why I enjoyed it. I think using the Halloween name just didn't work, but I loved what David Gordon Green did with that trilogy. So I was excited to see what he was going to do with an Exorcist film. And this, holy cow, missed the mark hard. It was, for the most part, it was boring. Its ties to the original Exorcist were pointless, and I just did not enjoy it. And when you got to this big climax of an exorcism, I just didn't care. And there were parts of it I actually laughed at it. When it's supposed to be intense and serious, I was laughing because I was like, what is going on? He's doing 2 more of these Exorcist movies. And if you want to see a better Exorcist movie, go watch The Exorcists with Doug Bradley. It was a far better film than this. And honestly, it was more fun than this. And I enjoyed it a whole hell of a lot more and would look forward to a sequel to that one over a sequel to The Exorcist Believer. The last one that lands on the bottoms is one that is actually on a lot of people's top horror movie lists for the year, and that is Skinamarink. Now, the concept of this I thought was great. Like, I know there was a short film of this previously. I did not know about that before I saw the film. So immediately I was like, this would have been a good short, but an hour and 40-minute film, it was very kind of headache-inducing and annoying the way that this film went. There was nothing creepy about it for me. You've seen images of this telephone, the creepy telephone. The creepy telephone's cool, but other than that, like, this movie did not work for me at all. Like, zero. It's like a 15-minute little creepy short would have worked better than an hour and 40 minutes where 20 minutes in, I'm like, man, I got a long way to go, and this is not doing it for me. By the time I got to the end, I was like, thank goodness it's over. Let's move on. So Skinamarink definitely landed on the bottoms for me for 2023. All right, let's flip it around. We're going to go to my highlights or my top horror films for 2023. My top 13.
Old Sawtooth Jack is gonna rise from the cornfields. It's gotta be stopped. Kill or be killed.
You've all heard the stories.
Crazy. It's insane, right?
If I don't leave here within the next 90 minutes, we are all going to be dead.
It's a slaughterhouse.
Oh, God.
Thanksgiving is a time for appreciation. It's a time to remember our many blessings.
You should probably run.
Mommy's with the maggots now.
Oh, hey. What are y'all doing in here?
These are movies that they're on this list because I had an absolute blast with it, and they are so much fun. Rewatchable films. I think every film on this is rewatchable. One of them is a rewatch, even would be a little hard, but it is a great, great horror movie. So let's start with number 13, and that is Slaughterhouse. This is a movie that did kind of a limited, I think it was only like one night theatrical showing. I went to the theater to see it, and I had a blast with this movie. It is a killer sloth in a sorority house. The sloth in the movie is a practical effects, basically a puppet. It is a puppet that moves around and it kills people and it takes selfies with itself of these deaths and does all the things with the girls in the sorority house. It is so funny. It is cheesy. It is just absolutely stupid fun. And it's one of those, it landed on my tops for 2023 because of how much fun I had with this film. There's a couple on here. They made the list because of that. I definitely recommend checking out Slaughterhouse. I know there are some of my friends out there, Gerald, who hated the movie, but I had a blast with this. Same with number 12. Number 12 is Cocaine Bear. Now, this is another cheesy movie, but this is kind of more of the bigger budget, released by a studio. It came out from Universal. Shocked that a studio put the money behind just kind of like B cheese horror movies. Like The Meg. The Meg needed to be something cheesy like this, but it wasn't. But Cocaine Bear, so funny. This bear that snorts cocaine that gets dropped in the woods and then goes on a rampage killing people. It is so funny. I absolutely loved Cocaine Bear. I know there was a lot of hype behind it, and a lot of people are very mixed on the movie. Some people love it. Some people not so much or in the middle, but it landed on this list because I had a blast with it, just like Slaughterhouse. Had an absolute blast with it. Love rewatching it because it's just a fun movie you can put on and just have fun. So there you go. Cocaine Bear at number 12. Number 11, just missing the top 10, is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Now, this is a movie that is based off of a single chapter in Bram Stoker's Dracula about the voyage of the Demeter. This movie, I felt, didn't get marketed well and kind of slipped through the cracks. Like, I thought this movie did a great job of setting up this creepy atmosphere on this ship with these crewmates. And then you put in this killer vampire that is slowly picking them off in the shadows, in the darkness. And there's some intense scenes with some kids in it that I can't believe they went as far as they did. Another episode that you should go listen to, Two Peas on a Podcast, where Nick and I talk about Last Voyage of the Demeter. That's why it landed on my top list for 2023, because it's just a great, creepy telling of a character that we know about, but in a different way. And I loved it. Well, here we go. We're getting into the top 10. Number 10. This is another movie that came out and I saw in the theater as it played for one night only. And that is a movie called Mad Heidi. This is a movie I have watched multiple times. I think I've watched it 2 or 3 times now. They call it a Swiss-ploitation film with Casper Van Dien as the very Swiss leader who runs all the cheese in Switzerland, and everybody can only eat cheese, through him, and he kind of runs it's kind of a dystopian kind of culture with him, and he's trying to come up with this special cheese that turns people into these like cheese zombies. And Heidi, her boyfriend, gets killed, and she seeks revenge when she trains with these like nun ghosts or whatever. And in this very bloody, very violent take on a exploitation film that I loved it so much. Like, after I saw it, I was like, I need to see this movie over and over again because it's ridiculous, but fun and just awesome. So if you haven't had a chance to see Mad Heidi, you can find it to rent. I don't think it's streaming anywhere, but definitely go check out Mad Heidi. Number 9 on the list is Megan. This is a movie that came out beginning of the year. It takes that idea of a robot/toy type of thing that turns and becomes a killer. This movie was a blast. Like, I loved it in the theater, but then later when it was released at home, there was an unrated version of it that made the film even better. And it wasn't just because they threw some gore in there, but there's one scene that definitely has a bigger impact because of the gore that they added to this movie. Think of it as a lot of people will say like a new age version of a Child's Play or something like that. We have a movie coming out in 2024 called Imaginary that's almost similar to that. It's like a killer teddy bear. Hopefully that one is fun. I'm kind of excited to check it out. And we're getting a sequel to Megan 2.0. Love this movie. Highly recommend it. And that's why it landed on my tops for 2023. All right, next on the list is Talk to Me. This is a movie that was talked about a lot, no pun intended, talked about a lot this year. There are a few scenes, one scene in particular that is intense as hell. And when I was watching it the first time, it's one of those almost, you could say white knuckle, where you're just kind of clenching your chair a little bit, holding on like, oh my God, that really set the tone for me for this film. Like, I was enjoying the beginning, and then this one scene happens, and you just kind of grip your chair, and you're in for this ride, and it just takes you through the rest of the film, and I loved it. I can't express how much I really did like Talk to Me. Going in, I was a little skeptical because sometimes when, movies get a little talked up, they might not be, you kind of build them up in your mind, and so they might not be as good as you hoped when they come out, but Talk to Me is one to check out. Next, this is one that came out recently, and you can stream it on Screambox, and that is Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls. This is a movie starring Andrew Bowser, where he plays his character, his online persona that he created, Onyx Fortuitous, who has done many like YouTube videos and shorts and different things, TikTok and all that. But he gets a feature film. It's a horror comedy. You have Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs. Before watching this movie, I knew who Onyx Fortuitous was. I had seen different clips of his, and he makes a small cameo in the movie Heebie Jeebie TV, which I saw at Horror Hound, saw again this year, and talked to those guys. So going in, I didn't know a whole lot about his Onyx Fortuitous persona before watching this movie, but this movie was fun. It was weird, silly adventure, and very much felt like a throwback to 80s horror comedy. It had some practical work that was really good of these creatures. They just look great. I highly recommend this movie. I laughed so much throughout this movie. So much fun. Jeffrey Combs in this movie is hamming it up. You could just tell he is having the time of his life making this. Go check out Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls. Like I said, it's streaming on Screambox right now. All right, number 6 for 2023 is a movie from Brandon Cronenberg, and that is Infinity Pool. This stars Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård, and this movie is a mind trip. I love Brandon Cronenberg. The Possessor, his film before this, landed at the top of my list a couple years ago when it came out, and this was no different. This honestly is not as good as The Possessor. I think The Possessor is a better film all around, but Infinity Pool is just crazy. It really messes with you. He does a great job with this mind trippy, somewhat body horror of clones, and you could tell that David Cronenberg is his dad because he has a lot of that similarities to what his dad does in his films. But man, I loved Infinity Pool. Like I said, The Possessor is a bit better, higher on my list, but Infinity Pool is one mind trip that you should definitely go check out. So here we're getting into our top 5, the top 5 for me of 2023. And coming in at number 5 is a movie you can stream on Shudder, and it is called When Evil Lurks. This is a movie directed by Demian Rugna. He also did a movie called Terrified. My gosh, if you watch this movie, make sure you have a comedy lined up to watch after it or something happy, because this movie will about wreck you. There are a couple scenes in this movie that are fucking intense, and I cannot believe what I saw on the screen. Let's just say that they're crazy. The blood, the gore, the intense scenes. And I hadn't seen Terrified when this came out. So I went and watched Terrified after seeing this, and Terrified has some intense scenes very similar to this. Like he pushes the envelope in visuals and the graphic nature that you see on screen. And then by the time you get to the end, like you feel very worn down with the character. There's another movie, I saw it at Whorehound, it didn't make the list. It's called Beaten to Death. And the same thing. By the end of it, you just feel beaten, broken, worn down with this main character. And then you get to the end and it's just heart-wrenching and it wrecks you. This movie is so damn good. Make sure, like I said, you have a comedy lined up, something happy to watch after you watch When Evil Lurks. Coming in at number 4, I have Dark Harvest. This is a movie directed by David Slade, and it is based off of the book Dark Harvest. And this movie, it got a very, very limited theatrical run. I wished it would have been playing by me because I would have loved to see this movie in the theater. This is kind of like a Hunger Games type of thing in this rural town with this character Pumpkin Jack, and then like all the boys in the town every year have to try to beat Pumpkin Jack and try to get out of this town. You're kind of stuck here. And when this movie gets going, like the cinematography in this movie is amazing. There are some scenes in a cornfield where the lighting and the camera angles and the work and everything else it looks fantastic. And then he does not hold back on some of the graphic scenes. I mean, David Slade also directed 30 Days of Night, which is one of my favorite vampire films. So he doesn't hold back on, pushing that rated R, which this does. There are a few scenes where I wish we would have got to see more, or we would have gotten more of the lore and background of this town and Sawtooth Jack, not Pumpkin Jack. I said Pumpkin Jack before, but Sawtooth Jack and everything else going on in this town. I wish we would have gotten more about, the townspeople in this. It sets you up for more at the end, but Dark Harvest, I know it slipped through the cracks for a lot of people. A lot of people haven't heard of it. Definitely go check it out. It is going to be on a regular rotation, especially during the fall season, because it's got a very good fall feel to it. Loved Dark Harvest. Number 3 on the list is an anthology film. The only anthology film to make the list. This is Satanic Hispanics. Demian Rugna, who directed When Evil Lurks, has a segment in this film. This movie is all Latino directors and their stories with this wraparound in a police station. And God, when I first saw this movie, I was like, man, I cannot wait to watch this movie again. I was fortunate enough to host a screening of it at the Esquire Theater here in Cincinnati, which again, if you're in Cincinnati, I host once a month, Frightful Fridays at the Esquire Theater. This was one of our screenings. Loved it. When I saw it the second time, loved it. I bought it immediately. You have Eduardo Sanchez, who is known for one of the directors of The Blair Witch. He did a segment in this. Mike Mendez, I've talked about Big Ass Spider many, many times. He did a segment in this. Also, he directed La Valantula, The Convent. Great movies. Gigi Saul Guerrero, she had a piece in VHS 85 and recently did Bingo Hell over on Amazon. Alejandro Brujas, who had pieces in Nightmare Cinema, and he did Juan of the Dead, if you've seen that. And of course, I said Demian Rugna, who When Evil Lurks, Terrified. Those are your directors in this anthology film. Love it. Every story in this, it goes from graphic, crazy story to this vampire comedy segment that's hilarious. There's another one that's really funny, but go find Satanic Hispanics and go watch it. Highly, highly recommended. All right, that leaves my top 2 for 2023. Coming in at number 2 is Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. I have been waiting for this movie since his faux trailer came out with the Grindhouse movies back in 2006. Honestly, this did not disappoint one single bit for me. It was very much like a hard R version of I Know What You Did Last Summer. There was a lot of I Know What You Did Last Summer vibes to it, with the story basically of a Black Friday gone wrong, and then, you know, a year later, this Thanksgiving killer, John Carver, is coming to kind of seek revenge on all these people, and it is so cheesy. It's just cheesy fun. Like, kills are over the top, blood splattering everywhere. I had a blast. Thanksgiving, I cannot wait. I think they have greenlit a Thanksgiving 2. Can't wait to see what they do. I really, really hope that the second one is close to as good as the first. I want John Carver to be a new slasher icon to come about. Thanksgiving was so good. All right, that leads us to my number one. My number one for 2023. My number one top favorite, whatever you want to call it, horror movie of 2023 is Evil Dead Rise. I was so stoked to come back to the Evil Dead world, and this time we're stuck in an apartment complex that is kind of emptying out because they're selling it. So there's not as many people in there as there could be. Then you get the book. This time there are records they play, the verses get played, and the shit hits the fan. Now, this movie definitely has the number one, the best opening title screen, not only of the year, but it might be one of the best title screens ever. There is this won't spoil anything, but there's this cold open that is awesome. And the possessed person comes up out of the lake as Evil Dead Rise kind of comes up behind him. It is just a sweet, sweet shot scene. Lee Cronin did an amazing job with this film. I am so excited to see more films in the Evil Dead franchise, in the Evil Dead world, the Evil Dead universe. Give me more Evil Dead. Give me all the things. I know they said they're going to make more, and I cannot wait. Evil Dead Rise is so good. Alyssa Sutherland in this film as the possessed mom. If you've seen the trailers, when, you know, she's in a bathtub.
Mommy's with the maggots now.
God, I love this movie. And I think what really amplified it for me, honestly, I saw this before the day before Horror Hound started, and they had a special screening, and we're waiting for the screening to start. Bruce Campbell walks down the aisle, and of course everybody in the theater like goes crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, Bruce Campbell is here, and he did this intro about the movie, hoping everybody loved it and all this stuff. So my excitement level before this movie even started was at an uber high. Then you give me this movie that is just full evil deadness, and I loved it so much. This is why it landed as my number one movie of 2023, because this is a movie I will go back and I will rewatch over and over and over again, along with the other movies in this franchise. Give me more Evil Dead. Cannot wait. It's my number one. There's 2023. It has come. It is gone. Now, looking ahead to 2024, we have some great movies that I am super, super excited for. There is a slasher called Founders Day that is coming out here in a couple weeks that I cannot wait to see. I think it looks like it could be a fun indie slasher. We're getting a new Strangers movie, The Strangers Chapter 1. I was a fan of the original The Strangers. I've come around to The Strangers Pray at Night. First time I saw it, I didn't love it, but I have watched it a couple times since and come around and really enjoy it. And I look forward to seeing what Rennie Harlan does with this new trilogy that he is doing of The Strangers. Obviously, we're getting a new Terrifier. Terrifier 3 is coming out towards the end of the year. I love Art the Clown. Terrifier 2 was great. Another movie coming to Shudder I'm excited for 2024, Destroy All Neighbors. It looks like a fun horror comedy. Speaking of horror comedies, there is a movie called Lisa Frankenstein coming out in February that looks like it could be really fun, but it could borderline on that. Could be really fun or it could be bad. Just a couple more on the list. Excited for this summer. We're getting The Quiet Place Day 1, a prequel to that original Quiet Place film where we're going back to when everything happened and how everything went down. We're getting a brand new Alien movie, Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez, who did the Evil Dead remake and did Don't Breathe. I have high hopes for this one. I'm really excited to see what he does with this, with the Alien franchise going forward. This takes place between the first Alien and then Aliens. So I can't wait to see what this story is. We're getting another Saw. And then finally, we're going to end the year with Nosferatu. So 2024 is going to be another great year for horror. There's going to be tons and tons and tons of indie horror coming out that I'm excited about. I'm going to see some of them at Horror Hound in March. But make sure you keep it right here at Old Man Brad. Just make sure you subscribe and not miss any episodes I have out. I'll be giving you all my thoughts on everything horror that I see throughout the year. Hopefully you enjoy the show and you subscribe and just come back for more. So that will do it for my tops and bottoms or highlights and lowlights for horror in 2023. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Like I said, drop me a review over at your favorite podcatcher. I'll be back soon with a brand new chapter of Old Man Brad very soon. Just snuggle up in that blanket, turn off the lights, because it's okay to be scared. We'll talk to you later, everybody.